The rain in Chicago doesn't wash away sins. It just makes the blood run into the gutters faster. Scarlett Monroe thought she was just closing another soul-crushing shift at a greasy diner, scraping together $9.60 in tips after 10 hours on her feet. Her mother was dying of stage 3 lung cancer in a hospital bed across town. The medical bills had climbed past $70,000, and her landlord had already taped the second eviction notice to her door. At 27, she looked closer to 40. Poverty and pain had carved deep lines around her eyes, and the scar on her ribs from her ex-boyfriend's knife still ached when it rained. The neon sign of Sal's Diner flickered its sickly yellow glow onto the rain-soaked pavement of Fifth Avenue. 2:17 in the morning on a Wednesday, the kind of hour that belonged only to the desperate and the broken. She stepped outside, the Chicago wind slicing through her thin coat like a blade, rain hammering down in relentless sheets. That was when she saw it. A heap of what looked like discarded rags crumpled between a dumpster and a stack of wooden pallets in the alley beside the diner. Then the rags moved. A small, choked whimper cut through the downpour. A tiny face looked up at her, pale as moonlight, framed by soaking wet dark curls. A boy, no older than 5, dressed in a miniature tuxedo that probably cost more than Scarlett made in 2 years, now torn and caked in mud and blood. He couldn't speak. He just trembled violently and thrust his left arm toward her. On his pale skin, 10 digits were scrawled in thick black marker. No name, no instructions, just a phone number. This wasn't a lost child at a shopping mall. This was a contingency plan. Scarlett pulled out her cracked phone, her fingers shaking as she dialed. She didn't call for an ambulance. She called the devil. The line picked up. No greeting, just a silence, so heavy the air seemed to thicken around her. The voice on the other end was a low baritone, like steel scraping against concrete. Calm, cold, and absolutely terrifying. Stay exactly where you are. Do not hang up. Do not move. If he is not there when I arrive, or if there is a single new scratch on him that wasn't there before, I will find you, and I will peel the skin from your bones, strip by strip. The line went dead. Scarlett stared at the phone, her heart slamming against her ribs like a caged bird. Peel the skin from your bones. That wasn't a figure of speech. She knew it. And when Marcus Valenti answered, "You don't hang up, you survive," she had no idea that one phone call would drag her into the darkest world she never knew existed, that the monster on the other end of the line would become her obsession, her protector, and the man she would kill for. If you're ready to fall into this dangerous love story, hit that like button right now. Share it with someone who craves dark romance as much as you do, and subscribe so you don't miss a single moment of what comes next. Because in Chicago, the devil doesn't just answer your call. He claims you. 12 minutes passed, like 12 years. Scarlett held the little boy tightly against her chest. Her thin coat was now soaked through and icy cold, clinging to her like a shroud of frozen water. She counted every second, every frantic heartbeat pounding in her ribs. She forced herself to believe she would not die tonight. Nico trembled in her arms. His warm breath brushed her neck, and Scarlett realized that she was praying. She did not know to whom, but she was praying. And then she heard it, the roar of engines tearing through the silence of the night. Not one car, but many. Tires ground against the wet asphalt like beasts charging in the dark. 3 glossy black Cadillac Escalades turned into Fifth Avenue at terrifying speed, moving in tight formation like sharks in black water. They did not slow down. They did not signal. They simply surged toward the alley, as if the world itself had to clear a path for them. The first vehicle mounted the curb and blocked one end of the alley. The third sealed the other. The middle one stopped directly in front of Scarlett, less than 10 meters away. The doors flew open together. 6 men poured out, all in black suits, broad-shouldered, faces cold as stone. Automatic rifles were held low but ready to fire at any moment. They formed a protective arc with their backs to her. Their eyes swept the dark alley as if hunting an enemy in the shadows. Scarlett held her breath. Instinct made her clutch Nico tighter, shrinking like a small animal before a pack of wolves. Then the door of the middle car opened. Slowly, unhurriedly, as if the man inside already owned the world and had no reason to rush. The man stepped out, and Scarlett immediately understood why the voice on the phone had terrified her so deeply. Marcus Valenti was over 1.85 meters tall. His powerful frame filled a costly charcoal suit of the kind Scarlett had only ever seen in fashion magazines at the dentist's office. His hair was black as ink, slicked back to reveal a face sharp as a blade, carved like granite, but it was his eyes that froze her. Gray. Gray like a winter storm. Gray like cold steel. Gray like the death that waits. He carried no umbrella. The rain poured over his head and over his expensive suit, yet he walked as if the rain did not exist, as if the sky itself did not dare to touch him. Those gray eyes swept the scene, over the guards, over Scarlett kneeling in the mud, and then stopped on the child in her arms. The world stopped turning. Scarlett saw it. Only a flicker, shorter than a heartbeat, but she saw it. The mask of ice cracked. Pain, fear, overwhelming relief, all crossed those gray eyes in an instant before the mask fell back into place. Marcus Valenti knelt in the mud, without hesitation, without caring that his $5,000 suit was soaking in dirty water, without caring about anything but the trembling child in the arms of a strange woman. Nico. His voice was hoarse, breaking at the edge of the word, as if that name alone was holding him upright. The boy lifted his head. His eyes were red. His face was smeared with mud and rain. But when he saw the man kneeling before him, all fear vanished. Papa. Nico's voice was small and weak, but it made Marcus Valenti tremble. His large hands, the hands Scarlett was certain had killed before, shook as they reached for his son. He pulled Nico into his chest, holding him tight as if the child would vanish if he loosened his grip for even a second. One hand supported the boy's back. The other checked the wound on his leg, on his face, on every centimeter of that small body. "Marco," he called out. His voice turned cold and commanding again. "Call Dr. Rossi back to the estate. Immediately." One of the guards nodded and took out his phone to make the call. Scarlett remained kneeling in the mud, watching, and she understood something that very few people in this world would ever witness. This was the devil's only weakness, his 5-year-old son with black curls and wide eyes. Marcus Valenti stood up, carrying Nico as if he were an irreplaceable treasure. He turned toward the cars and walked with decisive steps. Then he stopped and turned back to look at Scarlett, the woman still kneeling in the puddle, rain pouring over her tangled hair, her eyes wide with terror and exhaustion. Those gray eyes looked at her as if she were a problem to be solved. Not the look of gratitude, not the relief of a father who had just found his son again. It was the look of a predator deciding whether the prey in front of him should be released or dealt with. "Get in the car." The 2 words dropped into the air like 2 cold stones. Not an invitation, not a suggestion, a command. Scarlett stood up, her knees shaking so badly she nearly collapsed, mud clinging to her pants and coat. She shook her head, trying to keep her voice steady while her heart was racing wildly. "I just want to go home. I did not see anything. I swear I will not tell anyone." Marcus did not repeat himself. He only tilted his head slightly, a gesture so small it was almost invisible. But the guards understood. They moved toward Scarlett, their steps heavy and decisive. She backed away, her foot slipping on the wet pavement, her back hitting the cold brick wall of the diner. There was nowhere left to run. "You saw my face," Marcus said, his voice as calm as if he were discussing the weather. "You saw my son. You saw me weak for a child. In my world, that is information enough to kill someone." Scarlett swallowed, her throat dry as if someone were squeezing it shut. "I am a waitress who makes $9 a night. I know nothing about your world. I do not want to know." Marcus stepped closer, Nico still resting in his arms, the child's head leaning against his shoulder, eyes half closed with exhaustion. He stopped less than 1 meter away, and at that distance Scarlett could smell the expensive cologne mixed with rain and something more dangerous. "You have 2 choices," he said slowly, pressing each word into the air. "Walk into the car on your own feet, or be carried into it. I do not care which." Scarlett wanted to scream, to run, to do anything except obey this madman. But then she saw Nico looking at her. The boy had opened his eyes at some point, his wide eyes still red, and in that look there was something that made Scarlett's throat tighten. He was looking at her as if pleading, as if afraid she would disappear, as if she were the only familiar thing left in this nightmare. Scarlett closed her eyes for a second, then nodded. She walked toward the middle car, her legs heavy as if weighted with lead. A guard opened the door for her, and Scarlett climbed inside. The interior was wrapped in black leather, scented with sandalwood and something she could not name, perhaps the smell of money and power. She sat on the seat opposite, and a second later Marcus entered as well, still holding Nico. The door closed with a soft click that felt final. The convoy began to move. Marcus looked at her, those gray eyes traveling from her tangled hair down to her cheap-worn shoes. Name, Scarlett Monroe. Age, 27. Occupation, waitress at Sal's Diner. Why were you there at 2 a.m? I had just finished my shift. Scarlett answered each question, her voice trembling but not weak. She did not lie, because she knew lying to this man would be as useless as lying to death. Marcus watched her the entire time, and Scarlett felt as if he were reading every thought in her mind, every fear, every memory she was trying to hide. At last he nodded slightly, as if confirming something. "You are not lying," he said, his voice a little less cold than before. "But that changes nothing. Until I know who is behind my son's kidnapping, you will remain in my sight." Scarlett wanted to argue, to scream that she had a dying mother, piling bills, a life waiting for her no matter how broken it was. But she looked into those gray eyes and knew that every protest was meaningless. The cars sped into the night, rain still pouring against the windows. Scarlett looked out at the glass, her familiar city sliding past like blurred streaks of light. The streets she had walked 1,000 times, the alleys where she had sheltered from the rain, all of it was drifting away, as if she were leaving an old life forever. The 3-meter-high iron gate slowly opened, and Scarlett stepped into another world. The convoy glided along a winding cobblestone drive between 2 rows of ancient oak trees, their bare branches reaching into the night sky like skeletal arms in prayer. Soft garden lights lined the path, and through the rain that was finally easing, Scarlett saw it. The Valenti estate rose like a castle from a dark fairy tale, Italian in style with tall white stone columns, deep red tiled roofs, and dozens of windows glowing with warm golden light. A massive fountain stood at the center of the courtyard, a stone angel poised amid softly murmuring water. Guards patrolled everywhere, dark shapes moving in steady rhythm like spirits guarding hell. Scarlett was so overwhelmed that for a few seconds she forgot to be afraid. She had seen beautiful houses in magazines and in films, but standing before something like this in flesh and stone was entirely different. Her tiny apartment could have fit inside the living room of this place. The cars stopped before the main entrance. The enormous oak doors opened, light spilling out as if in welcome. But Scarlett knew it was not a welcome, it was a sentence. Marcus stepped out first, still carrying Nico in his arms, and a middle-aged man in a white coat was already waiting on the steps. Dr. Rossi. Scarlett guessed from the medical bag in his hand. They exchanged a few brief words in Italian. Then Marcus hurried inside with the doctor close behind. Scarlett was led after them by a guard. Inside, the mansion was even more lavish than the exterior. White marble floors gleamed beneath a vast crystal chandelier hanging from the high ceiling. Priceless classical paintings lined the walls, a spiral staircase curved upward, and the scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air. Scarlett felt as if she were walking on clouds, or stepping into a film where she did not belong. She watched Marcus's back vanish up the stairs with Nico and the doctor. Then a hoarse voice cut through her thoughts. "Follow me." An older woman stood there, her silver hair neatly pinned up, her face stern but not cold, dressed in simple black, her back straight as a ruler. Rosa, the housekeeper, whose name Scarlett would learn later. She led Scarlett through endless corridors, past closed doors, upstairs, left, right, until Scarlett was completely disoriented. At last they stopped before a wooden door. Rosa opened it and gestured for her to enter. The room was larger than Scarlett's entire apartment. A king-size bed with cream-colored linens, an oak wardrobe, a dressing table with a large mirror, a window overlooking the back garden, a private bathroom with a marble tub. Everything was luxurious, perfect, and cold, like a 5-star hotel room where no one truly lived. Scarlett turned back to say something to Rosa, but the door had already closed, and she heard the familiar click. The sound of the lock from the outside. She rushed forward and grabbed the handle. It did not move. She banged on the door, called out. No one answered. Scarlett leaned her back against the door and slid down to the floor. Only then did she realize she was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. She thought of her mother lying alone in the hospital, not knowing where her daughter was. She thought of the hospital bills piling up, the overdue rent, the shift tomorrow that she would not be able to make. She thought of her life, 10 hours on her feet every day to earn $9 in tips, a mother slowly dying, and now she was locked inside the mansion of a Mafia lord. A golden cage was still a cage. Scarlett stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark garden below. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray, without a single star. She had never felt so alone. Sleep did not come to Scarlett that night. She lay on the king-size bed that felt as soft as clouds, the sheets smoother than anything she had ever touched, and yet she could not close her eyes. The high ceiling above her felt as if it were pressing down. The darkness in the unfamiliar room seemed to watch from every corner. She thought of her mother. Gloria Monroe was lying alone in a hospital room at that very moment, perhaps waking in the middle of the night and wondering why her daughter had not come to visit. Did she know where Scarlett was? Was she worried? Or was she thinking that her daughter had abandoned her the way her father had 19 years before? The thought made Scarlett's throat tighten, She thought of the bills piled on the table in her small apartment. $70,000 in hospital fees, 2 months of overdue rent, a notice that the electricity would be cut off by the weekend, the shift tomorrow that she would not be able to make, and Sal would fire her without hesitation because there were always dozens of other girls waiting in line to work 10 hours a day for $9 in tips. She had lost everything just for stopping to help a child in a dark alley. And then, as if the night were not cruel enough, the memory of Derek came flooding back. The old suburban apartment, the smell of cheap beer and cigarettes, his fist striking her face for the first time after an argument about her coming home late. She had believed him when he cried and apologized, promised he would never do it again. She stayed for 2 more years, long enough for fists to turn into knives. Scarlett unconsciously touched the long scar along her ribs, still aching whenever it rained. That night Derek was drunk. He told her she belonged to him forever, and if she dared to leave, he would kill her. The blade tore through her flesh, blood pouring out, and Scarlett ran. She ran out of the apartment, out of the city, all the way to Chicago, with a few $100s in her pocket and a scar that would follow her for life. She took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. She had survived Derek. She had survived poverty. She would survive this too. She had to survive. A soft knock made Scarlett sit up, her heart racing. She looked at the clock on the wall. 3 in the morning. Who could be knocking at this hour? The knock came again, gentle and hesitant, as if the person knocking were afraid of being discovered. Then the door opened. Someone had unlocked it from the outside. Scarlett held her breath, but instead of a guard or a killer, she saw a small figure standing in the doorway. Nico. He stood there in pale blue pajamas, his left leg carefully bandaged, his arms clutching a worn old teddy bear with a torn ear. His wide eyes were red, his cheeks still streaked with tears. "I cannot sleep." His voice trembled, so small that Scarlett had to lean forward to hear it. "I am afraid. The bad people will come back." Scarlett hesitated for a second. This was the son of the man who was imprisoning her, the child who had pulled her into this nightmare. But looking into those frightened eyes, she saw only a 5-year-old who needed someone. She knelt to his level, her voice gentle. "No one can come in here. Your father will not allow it. But I am still afraid," Nico whispered, tears welling again. Scarlett sighed, then held out her hand. "Come in. I will stay with you." The boy stepped inside, climbed onto the bed, and curled up in one corner. Scarlett sat beside him, unsure what to do. "What do you like?" she asked, trying to distract him from his fear. "Dinosaurs," Nico answered at once, his eyes lighting up a little. "I like dinosaurs the most." Scarlett smiled. For the first time in that long, terrifying night, she began to tell a made-up story about a small dinosaur who got separated from his herd and had to cross high mountains and deep rivers to find his way home. She did not know exactly what she was saying. She let the words flow naturally, her voice soft, and even like the lullabies her mother used to sing to her when she was a child. Nico listened, his eyes slowly drooping. The teddy bear held tighter against his chest, and then he fell asleep, curled up like a kitten, his head resting on Scarlett's arm. She looked at his innocent sleeping face, the black curls falling over his forehead, his breathing steady and peaceful, and for the first time since she had been brought here, she felt something other than fear. Morning sunlight slipped through the curtains and woke Scarlett. She blinked a few times, needing a moment to remember where she was. The unfamiliar room, the high ceiling, the sheets smooth as silk, and a small warm weight curled beside her. Nico was still sleeping soundly, his head resting on her arm, the old teddy bear pressed between them. In sleep he looked strangely peaceful. No trace of the terror from the night before, only a 5-year-old dreaming of dinosaurs. Scarlett was about to move when the sensation of being watched made her freeze. She turned toward the door. Marcus Valenti stood there, leaning against the doorframe, arms folded across his chest. He was not wearing a suit like the night before, only a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up and black trousers, but the sense of authority around him was still suffocating. His gray eyes took in the scene before him, and Scarlett saw something unfamiliar pass through them. Not anger as she feared, but something softer, warmer. As he looked at his son sleeping beside a strange woman, the moment vanished as quickly as it came. "Papa." Nico was awake, and when he saw his father, he jumped off the bed and ran to wrap his arms around Marcus's leg. "Papa, Miss Scar told me a story. She knows a lot about dinosaurs. She told me about a little dinosaur who got lost and found his way home. I liked it a lot." Marcus bent down, one hand brushing his son's hair, but his eyes were on Scarlett, expressionless, unreadable. "Come outside," he said to her calmly. "We need to talk." Scarlett swallowed and climbed off the bed, following Marcus into the hallway. Rosa was already waiting and led Nico to breakfast, leaving the two of them facing each other in heavy silence. "I have investigated," Marcus said without preamble. "You really are a waitress at Sal's. No ties to any organization, no criminal record, nothing suspicious except a life that is pitiful to the point of tragedy." Scarlett clenched her teeth but did not argue. He was telling the truth. "My son," Marcus continued, his voice changing slightly, "has not slept since his mother died. 3 years. He has nightmares every night. Nannies come and go. None of them last more than a month. But last night, he slept." Silence. Scarlett did not know what to say. "You will stay," Marcus said, and it was not a question. "You will take care of Nico until I find out who is behind the kidnapping. You will be paid. You will be protected. But you will not leave the estate." "And my mother?" Scarlett asked at once, her voice trembling. "She is in the hospital. Stage 3 lung cancer. I need to know if she is all right. I need to call the hospital." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "You will be allowed to call. Under supervision." That afternoon, Scarlett called the hospital with Marco standing beside her. She spoke with a nurse, with a doctor, and learned that her mother was stable but needed more chemotherapy. The estimated cost was another $12,000. Money she did not have. When she hung up, her face pale, Marcus was standing in the doorway. He had heard everything. "I will pay all the hospital bills," he said. "Move her to a private room. Hire the best doctors." Scarlett turned sharply, her eyes angry when she should have been grateful. "I do not need your charity." Marcus stepped closer, his gray eyes fixed on her. "This is not charity. This is ensuring you have no reason to do something foolish like running away. Your mother is cared for. You will stay where you are. It is that simple." He turned and walked away, leaving Scarlett alone with 1,000 words she wanted to shout after him but could not. She swallowed them all and understood a bitter truth. She had no choice left, but at least her mother would be cared for. A week passed, and Scarlett learned that even hell had a schedule. Life in the Valenti estate ran by unspoken rules, as precise as a carefully wound machine. Every morning at 7 she woke, washed, and dressed in the clothes that were already waiting in her wardrobe, placed there by someone she never saw. She went down to breakfast, and Nico was always there waiting, his wide eyes lighting up when she entered. "Miss Scar," he called out, waving eagerly. "Sit next to me." During the day, Scarlett spent all her time with Nico. She read to him comic books about dinosaurs that Rosa had somehow found somewhere in the mansion. She watched cartoons with him in a private screening room as large as a cinema. She taught him to draw, though her own skills were no better than a third grader's. But Nico did not care. He only needed someone beside him, someone who was not a paid nanny or a silent guard. In the evenings, Scarlett ate alone in her room. Marcus never appeared. She heard he often came home very late. Sometimes not at all. The work of a Mafia lord, she guessed. The kind of work she did not want to know about. The staff treated her as if she were something stuck to the bottom of their shoes. The chef looked at her with contempt when she stepped into the kitchen to ask for a glass of water. The maids whispered behind her back whenever she walked down the halls. Scarlett was not deaf. She heard everything. "Who is that girl?" A shrill female voice. "Probably the boss's latest mistress," another voice replied with mockery. "Where did he bring her from? Look how cheap she looks." Scarlett clenched her teeth but said nothing. She was used to insults. 2 years with Derek had taught her how to swallow humiliation and keep going. She focused on Nico, on the only thing that mattered here, and ignored everything else. Rosa was the only one who was kind to her. The old housekeeper did not say much, but her small gestures said everything. An extra blanket placed on Scarlett's bed when the nights grew cold. A cup of hot tea appearing on the table every morning. A look of sympathy when the other servants laughed behind her back. One night, Rosa brought Scarlett a bowl of hot soup. She sat on the chair by the bed and watched her eat in silence. "You are very good with the boy," Rosa said, her voice rough with age. "It is the first time I have seen him cheerful since the mistress died." Scarlett looked up, wanting to ask, but afraid to. Rosa seemed to read her thoughts. "Isabella," she said the name with regret. "The master's wife. She was very beautiful, gentle. The master loved her madly. How did she die?" Scarlett asked softly, almost a breath. "A car accident. 3 years ago," Rosa answered, but her eyes looked away. "But some say it was not an accident." Scarlett felt her blood turn cold. "You mean—" I said nothing. Rosa rose, her old face closing off. "You should know this world is more dangerous than you think. There are things best not asked." She stepped to the door, then paused and turned back. and there are people who are hurting more than they show. Do not let appearances deceive you." The door closed, leaving Scarlett alone with her tangled thoughts. Marcus's wife had not died in an accident. Someone had killed her. In Marcus Valenti's world, death came as easily as breath. And she was in the middle of that world, with no way out. But amid the fear, another thought slipped into her mind. Marcus Valenti was not only a devil, he was a man who had lost his wife, raising a child alone, living with the ghost of the woman he loved. That night, Scarlett lay staring at the ceiling, thinking of the cold man sleeping somewhere in this vast mansion. Did he dream of Isabella? Did he wake in the night and reach for the empty side of the bed? Did he cry when no one was watching? She wondered if devils knew how to cry. Nico Valenti was the sweetest child Scarlett had ever met, and also the loneliest. 2 weeks had passed since that fateful rainy night, and the bond between her and the boy had grown far beyond anything she had imagined. Nico clung to her like a shadow, followed her from room to room, sat beside her when she ate, lay beside her when she slept. When she went to the bathroom, he waited outside the door, and when she came out, his wide eyes lit up as if she had returned from a long journey. Scar, he began to call her that, dropping the longer Scarlett that his tongue still could not shape properly. "Scar, look at this. Scar read me a story. Scar, I am hungry." That tender name made Scarlett's heart ache every time she heard it. No one had called her by a nickname since her mother had been well enough to do so, since she could still hold her and call her my little Scar. Scarlett taught Nico how to draw. They sat in his playroom, the floor covered with paper and colored pencils. Scribbled pictures came to life. A blue dinosaur with an absurdly long tail, a yellow house with a bright red roof, a smiling sun in the corner of the page. Scarlett drew a cat, and Nico laughed because it looked more like a ball of cotton with ears than a cat. She drew a dog, and he declared it looked like a potato with legs. They laughed together, Nico's clear laughter filling the wide room. One afternoon, Nico handed her a special drawing, 3 people standing together in front of a big house. The tallest had black hair, wore a suit, and looked serious. The smallest had curly hair and was grinning widely, and in the middle was a woman with long reddish-brown hair, holding the hands of the other 2. "Who is this?" Scarlett asked, though she already knew. "This is Papa," Nico pointed to the tallest. "This is me," his small finger moved to the smallest. "And this is you, Scar." He looked up at her, his eyes shining. "Do you like it?" Scarlett could not speak. Her throat tightened, her eyes burned. "I love it," she whispered, pulling him into her arms. At night, Scarlett sang Nico to sleep. She did not have a good singing voice, but she remembered the songs her mother used to sing to her when she was a child. Simple melodies about the moon, about the stars, about sweet dreams. Nico lay still, his eyes slowly closing, the worn teddy bear held tight in his arms. And he slept, without nightmares, without waking in the night. Rosa was the first to notice the change. "He eats better now," she told Scarlett one morning, surprised. "He sleeps better, and he smiles. It is the first time I have seen him truly smile since the mistress died." Scarlett did not know what to say. She only did what instinct told her to do, what she wished someone had done for her when she was little and afraid. One late afternoon, Marcus came home earlier than usual. Scarlett was sitting with Nico in the playroom when she heard heavy footsteps in the hall. The door opened and Marcus stood there, still in his black suit, looking tired after a long day of work she did not want to know about. "Papa." Nico jumped up and ran to hug his father's leg as always, but this time he did not only hug him, he took Marcus's hand and led him to where Scarlett was sitting. "Papa, look at this picture I drew. Miss Scar taught me." Marcus took the paper from his son's hand, the drawing of the 3 people in front of the house. His eyes lingered on the woman with reddish-brown hair in the middle, then slowly lifted to look at Scarlett. She could not read that look. It was not as cold as before, but not warm either. It was something in between, something that was changing that even he had not yet named. "It is beautiful," Marcus said to Nico, but his eyes stayed on her, and Scarlett felt that look long after he had gone, as if it had burned a mark into her skin. Marcus Valenti was a man accustomed to being obeyed. Scarlett Monroe was a woman who had forgotten how to bow. One evening, Marcus came home earlier than usual. Scarlett was feeding Nico dinner in the dining room when he entered, still in his black suit but with his tie loosened, his hair slightly out of its perfect slicked back order. "Papa," Nico cried out, waving eagerly. "Papa, have dinner with me and Miss Scar." Marcus looked at his son, then at Scarlett, and after a moment of hesitation she almost did not notice. He nodded. He took the seat at the head of the table, and Rosa quickly brought another plate. It was the first time they had eaten together. The air was taut like a string about to snap. Scarlett kept her eyes on her food, feeling the gray gaze sweep over her every second. Nico chattered about his day, about the pictures he drew, about the songs Miss Scar taught him, but Scarlett barely heard him. She only wanted the meal to end. After Nico went to sleep, a guard appeared at Scarlett's door. "The master wants to see you." In the study. Scarlett swallowed and followed the man through the long corridors. Marcus's study lay in the west wing of the mansion. A large room with dark oak-paneled walls, shelves of books reaching the ceiling, and the faint scent of whiskey in the air. Marcus sat behind a mahogany desk. Before him a glass of amber liquor half finished. He gestured for her to sit in the chair opposite. Sit. Not an invitation. A command. Scarlett sat, her back straight, her hands on her knees. She did not let him see her fear, though her heart was racing. Marcus watched her for a long moment, as if deciding where to begin. "Tell me about yourself," he said at last. "About your family. About your past." "I already told you," Scarlett replied warily. 27. A waitress. A mother with cancer. Nothing else to tell. "Where is your father?" "He left when I was 8. Siblings?" "None. Friends?" "No time for friends when you work 3 jobs a day." Marcus nodded slowly, his finger tapping lightly on the rim of his glass. Silence stretched. Then he asked the question Scarlett had feared from the start. "The scar on your body. Who did it?" Scarlett froze. Her blood seemed to stop flowing. She knew he had seen it. That afternoon when she bent to tie Nico's shoe, her shirt had lifted slightly, revealing the long scar along her ribs. She had hoped he would not notice. But Marcus Valenti was a man who missed nothing. "That is none of your business," Scarlett said, colder than she meant. "Everything concerning those who live in my house is my business," Marcus replied, his eyes never leaving her. "I do not live here." Scarlett clenched her teeth. "I am being held here. There is a difference." Marcus tilted his head, not angry as she expected. Instead, there was curiosity in those gray eyes. And perhaps something else she did not want to name. "Who made that scar?" "Scarlett." His voice lowered, almost gentle. "Was it a former lover? A husband?" Scarlett stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. Her hands shook, but her voice did not. "A bastard who thought he had the right to control me, who thought he had the right to own me, who thought I belonged to him." She looked straight into Marcus's eyes, not looking away. "Do you want to be the next one?" Without waiting for an answer, Scarlett turned and walked out. She did not ask permission, did not look back, did not care about the consequences. She had lived with a man who controlled her for 2 years. She would not let that happen again. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floor, quick and firm. She waited for a call to stop her, an order, footsteps chasing after her. But there was nothing, only silence. And somehow the silence was even more frightening. After that night, something changed. Scarlett had braced herself for Marcus's fury, for punishment for leaving without permission, for cold threats. But nothing came. The next day, she still woke in the locked room, still ate breakfast with Nico, still lived her captive life. Only one thing was different. Marcus began to come home earlier. Every evening at 6, the sound of engines rolled through the courtyard, and he entered the dining room just as Scarlett and Nico sat down. The first time the tension was suffocating. Scarlett ate in silence, her eyes fixed on her plate, feeling the gray gaze watching her every movement. Nico chattered as always, but he sensed the strain between the adults and his voice grew quieter. The second time Marcus spoke first. "What did you do today, Nico?" The simple question fell like a stone into still water. Nico lit up and began to talk about his day so fast, Scarlett could barely follow. "I drew a 3-headed dinosaur. Papa, Miss Scar said it looked like a dragon, but I told her no, it is a 3-headed dinosaur. And Miss Scar taught me a song about the moon. Papa, do you want to hear it?" Marcus looked at his son, and Scarlett saw something she had never seen before. The cold on that sharp face melted into a tenderness she had not thought this man possessed. The gray eyes of a winter storm softened as he watched his excited little boy. "Yes, sing it for Papa," Marcus said, and Nico immediately began to sing, off-key and out of rhythm but full of enthusiasm. Scarlett watched and felt something ache in her chest. In the days that followed, short conversations began between Marcus and Scarlett. Not the tense interrogations of before, but ordinary questions and brief answers. "What did Nico learn today?" "He is practicing writing his name. Not very neatly yet, but he is trying very hard." Marcus nodded, something passing through his eyes that Scarlett could not name. "He is smart. He learns quickly. Like his mother." Silence. Scarlett did not ask about Isabella. She knew some wounds should not be touched. One evening after dinner, Marcus did not disappear into his study as usual. Instead, he followed Nico upstairs to his bedroom. Scarlett stood in the hallway about to return to her room when Marcus's voice made her stop. He was reading to Nico. His deep voice gently told the story of Peter Rabbit sneaking into Mr. McGregor's garden, of stolen carrots, and a breathless chase. Scarlett leaned against the wall, closed her eyes, and listened. She did not know how long she stood there. When she opened her eyes, Marcus was in front of her. He had left Nico's room without her hearing a step. "You do not have to hide," he said. "Neither cold nor warm. Just a simple statement. I am not hiding," Scarlett replied, feeling her cheeks warm for reasons she did not understand. "I was just listening." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, those gray eyes unreadable. Then he nodded and walked past her toward the stairs, but he stopped and turned back. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft as breath, "for what you do for him." Then he walked away, leaving Scarlett alone in the empty hall. Those two words, from the mouth of a devil, felt like something breaking and something else beginning to form. The past never truly leaves. It only waits in the dark. 3 weeks had passed since Scarlett stepped into Marcus Valenti's world, and she had begun to grow used to her new life. The shared dinners, the brief conversations, the lingering looks she did not dare analyze. But night was still her enemy. That night she dreamed of Derek. The old suburban apartment appeared with cruel clarity. The cracked walls, the smell of cheap beer and cigarettes clinging to every corner. Derek stood there, his once handsome face twisted by drink, his eyes clouded with something between love and hatred. "Where do you think you are going?" he shouted, spittle hitting her face. "You belong to me, forever." The first blow struck her cheek. Scarlett fell to the floor, the metallic taste of blood in her mouth. She tried to crawl away, but he grabbed her hair and dragged her back. Then she saw the knife. The steel blade gleamed under the weak yellow light, and Derek's smile appeared as he pulled up her shirt. "I will leave a mark," he whispered, his alcohol-soaked breath in her ear. "So you will remember who you belong to." The blade tore into her flesh. Pain so great she could not breathe. Warm blood ran over her skin, and Derek's laughter echoed like a demon's. Scarlett screamed. She woke with a start, drenched in sweat, her heart pounding as if it would break her ribs. The room was dark and unfamiliar, and it took a few seconds to remember where she was. Not the old apartment, not with Derek. She was in the Valenti mansion. She was safe. But the tears kept coming. She did not realize she was crying until she felt the pillow wet beneath her cheek. Her whole body shook uncontrollably, and the scar along her ribs ached as if the wound had just been carved into her skin. The door burst open. Scarlett flinched, instinct making her curl inward, retreating toward the head of the bed. But it was not Derek, not an enemy. Marcus Valenti stood in the doorway, his hair slightly loose, his white shirt partly unbuttoned, as if he had just risen from sleep. His gray eyes swept the room for danger, then stopped on her. "I heard you scream," he said, his voice rough with sleep but alert. Scarlett turned her face away, ashamed to let him see her like this. Weak, broken, sorry. She tried to sound calm and failed. "It was just a nightmare. I am fine." But Marcus did not leave. He entered the room, closed the door behind him, and sat on the chair by the bed, not too close, not touching her, just there in the dark, like a wall between her and the ghosts of the past. "What did he do to you?" Marcus asked, his voice low and gentle. Not a command, not a demand, just a simple question waiting for an answer. Silence stretched. Scarlett looked at her trembling hands, and somehow she began to speak. "He thought love was possession, control, violence. He hit me for the first time after 6 months of dating, and I believed him when he cried and apologized. I stayed 2 more years. 2 years to learn that sorry does not mean it will not happen again. Is he still alive? I do not know. I ran. 3 years ago." Marcus said nothing. He did not offer cheap comfort like everything will be all right or I understand how you feel. He only sat there in the dark, silent and steady like a rock in a storm. And somehow that presence was more comforting than any words. "He cannot hurt you anymore," Marcus said at last, his voice deep and certain like a vow. "No one can. Not here." Scarlett looked at the man sitting in the shadows, his angular face half light, half dark, his gray eyes glinting like stars. And for the first time she did not see a devil. She saw a warrior standing guard in the night. 1 month after stepping into Marcus Valenti's world, Scarlett was allowed to go outside for the first time. She had asked to visit her mother the week before, and Marcus agreed on one condition, that Marco would go with her. Scarlett did not object. She only wanted to see her mother, even once, even if 10 guards followed her. The black Escalade glided through the familiar streets of Chicago, and Scarlett looked out the window at the city she had lived in for 3 years. Everything looked the same. The corner cafes, The homeless people huddled under awnings, the yellow taxis crowding the roads. But she was different. She was no longer a waitress earning $9 in tips each night. She was a prisoner in a mafia lord's golden cage. St. Mary's Hospital stood on the east side of the city, a stark white building with rows of bright windows. But instead of the regular ward Scarlett knew, Marco led her to the VIP wing on the 12th floor. Gloria Monroe's room was now as large as a small apartment, with an adjustable bed, a leather sofa, and a window overlooking the city. Her mother lay in the bed, thinner than the last time Scarlett had seen her, but with more color in her skin, and the heart monitor beeped steadily beside her. "My daughter," Gloria opened her eyes when she heard the door, and her gaunt face lit up. "You came." Scarlett rushed to the bedside, took her mother's frail hand, and tried to hold back tears. "You look better, Mom," she whispered. "You look so much better." "The doctors here are very good," Gloria said, her voice weak but warm. "But my child, why does someone drive you now? What do you do that you have a private driver like this?" Scarlett swallowed and lied without blinking. "A new job, Mom. I tutor the son of a wealthy family. They treat me very well." Gloria looked at her daughter, her old eyes still sharp. She did not fully believe it, Scarlett knew, but she was too weak to press further, and perhaps she did not want the truth. "Promise me you are safe." Gloria squeezed her daughter's hand. "I am safe, Mom," Scarlett answered, and this time she did not know if she was lying. They stayed for an hour. Scarlett told her mother about Nico, about the pictures he drew, about the songs she taught him. She did not mention Marcus, did not mention the mansion, did not mention captivity. She only wanted her mother to be at peace. On the way back, the car stopped at a red light at a quiet intersection. Scarlett was staring out the window, her mind still with the image of her mother in the hospital bed, when a figure ran into the road and stopped right in front of the car. Marco slammed the brakes, and the car lurched to a stop. "What the hell?" Marco muttered, his hand already on the gun at his side. Scarlett looked out and her blood turned cold. Derek Nash stood in the road, drunk, clothes disheveled, eyes bloodshot. 3 years had aged him, his once handsome face now bloated with drink, but the madness in his eyes was unchanged. He saw her through the glass and a twisted smile spread across his face. "Get out of the car, Scarlett," he shouted, his voice slurred. "You think you can run. I have been looking for you for 3 years. 3 years. You belong to me." Marco stepped out of the car, one hand raised to signal him to stop. "Go somewhere else, now." The guard's voice was cold. "Who the hell are you?" Derek spat on the ground and lunged at Marco with his fist raised. A fight broke out. Marco dodged the first punch, but the second struck his shoulder. He hit back, punching Derek in the stomach. But the drunk man was wild, numb to pain, charging like a feral animal. Scarlett sat frozen in the car, her heart pounding, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear, but she could not move. Then another car stopped behind them. A door opened and Marcus Valenti stepped out. He had been watching from the start. Another car, a safe distance, close enough to intervene. Marcus said nothing. He walked straight to Derek, and before the man could react, Marcus's fist came down. Once, twice. Derek collapsed to the ground, blood running from his nose and mouth. Marcus grabbed his collar, hauled him up, and looked straight into the eyes of the man, groaning at his feet. "Listen carefully." Marcus's voice was low like thunder, cold as ice. "If you come within a mile of her again, I will bury you alive, and no one will ever find your body." He threw Derek down like a sack of trash and turned to Scarlett. His gray eyes swept over her, checking for injuries, and only when he was sure she was unharmed did he breathe out. "Were you following me?" Scarlett asked, her voice trembling, unsure whether to be angry or grateful. Marcus looked at her, and in his eyes was something she did not dare name. "I protect what is mine." Scarlett knew she should be angry at being treated like property, like a possession, but when she looked at Marcus, when she saw Derek groaning on the ground, the only thing she felt was her heart beating wildly out of rhythm. Nico Valenti turned 6 on a rainy November day, and Scarlett was determined to make it the most special day of his life. She spent the entire week preparing, working with Rosa and the staff to transform the grand living room into a dinosaur kingdom. Green and orange balloons hung everywhere, papier-mâché dinosaurs lined the walls, and a giant volcano-shaped cake with a T-Rex standing on top sat at the center of the table. For the first time since Scarlett arrived, the servants looked at her differently, not with contempt or suspicion, but with respect and even admiration as they saw how devoted she was to the boy they all loved. Marcus came home early that day, earlier than he ever had before, and he did not come empty-handed. In his arms was a golden retriever puppy, with honey-colored fur and wide, innocent eyes. Nico saw it, and his joyful scream could be heard across the mansion. "Papa," he ran forward and hugged both his father and the puppy at once. "Is it for me? Really? Really? Papa?" Marcus nodded, and a rare smile appeared on his usually cold face. "Happy birthday, my son." The party unfolded with laughter, music, and the soft yipping of the new puppy. Nico was happier than ever, running around showing the dog to everyone from Rosa to the guards. Scarlett stood in a corner watching, and her heart felt strangely warm. She caught Marcus looking at her, not with his usual cold or assessing gaze, but with something deeper, warmer, and far more dangerous. Night came, and after Nico fell asleep with the puppy curled beside him, Scarlett went out onto the balcony to look at the stars. The Chicago sky was rarely as clear as that night. The stars glittered like diamonds scattered on black velvet. She was leaning on the railing when she heard footsteps behind her. Marcus stood beside her, hands in his pockets, eyes lifted to the sky. Silence stretched, but it was no longer tense. It was a comfortable silence between two people, used to each other's presence. "Isabella liked to watch the stars," Marcus said suddenly, his voice low and distant. "She said each star was a soul watching over us." Scarlett said nothing and listened. She was very gentle. Marcus went on, still looking upward. "She was my light. When she died, I thought I would never." His words broke off, his jaw tightening. "It was not an accident, was it?" Scarlett asked softly. "No," Marcus replied, his voice hard as stone. "My enemies killed her to warn me, to show me that even the people I loved most were not safe." Heavy silence followed. Scarlett felt the pain in every word, the pain of a man who had lost everything and still lived with guilt each day. "My father left when I was 8, she said without knowing why she was sharing it. "One morning he went out to buy cigarettes and never came back. My mother worked 3 jobs to raise me, and I grew up thinking I was not worth staying for. And then there was Derek. He does not deserve to be named," Marcus said coldly when she mentioned the man who hurt her. Another silence. They stood side by side in the night, 2 broken souls finding each other in the dark. Marcus turned to look at her, and Scarlett felt her breath catch. He lifted his hand and his fingers brushed the curve of her cheek, gentle as if afraid she might shatter. Her skin burned under his touch, and she leaned into it without meaning to. Then Marcus pulled his hand back abruptly, as if he had touched fire. "You should go inside," he said hoarsely. "It is cold." He turned and walked away without looking back, and Scarlett stood alone on the balcony, the place where his fingers had touched her still warm, knowing she was falling into something more dangerous than the Mafia itself. There are enemies you can see, and there are enemies who smile at you while sharpening their knives behind your back. Victor Valenti arrived at the estate one afternoon when Marcus was not home. He came without warning, his sleek black Porsche pulling up at the entrance, and he walked in as if this place were still his own home. Victor was 33, 3 years younger than Marcus, and handsome in an entirely different way. If Marcus was a winter storm, cold and terrifying, then Victor was summer sunlight, warm and charming. He smiled easily, spoke easily, and seemed far more approachable than his quiet older brother. But from the moment Scarlett saw Victor, she felt something was wrong. Not because of anything he did, but because of his eyes. Those brown eyes looked at her as if calculating something, as if she were a piece on a chessboard he was studying how to move. "Uncle Victor." Nico ran to hug him, and Victor bent to lift his nephew into his arms, grinning. "There is my nephew. Oh, how you have grown." They played together in the living room, Victor chasing Nico, pretending to be a dinosaur, making the boy laugh. But all the while, his eyes kept sliding toward Scarlett, who was sitting in a corner reading. When Nico ran off to the bathroom, Victor came over to her. "So you are my brother's new one," he said lightly, though something sharp lay beneath his tone. "I take care of Nico," Scarlett replied without lifting her eyes from the book. "Of course." Victor smiled thinly and sat in the chair opposite her. "My brother always has the best of everything, the best cars, the biggest houses, the most beautiful women." Scarlett looked up and met his gaze. "I am not his." Victor tilted his head, the smile still on his lips but not reaching his eyes. "Do you know who he is? What he does? How many people he has killed? I know. He is not a good man, Scarlett." Victor lowered his voice and leaned toward her. "He is dangerous. You should leave while you still can, before it is too late." Scarlett looked at him, and the survival instinct she had sharpened through 2 years with Derek screamed in her mind. This man did not care about her safety. No one who drove a Porsche and wore Armani cared about an anonymous waitress. He wanted something, and it was not good. "Is that concern or a threat?" she asked, calmer than she felt. Victor smiled but did not answer. At that moment, the sound of engines rolled through the courtyard. Marcus had returned. Victor rose, smoothed his jacket, the charming smile back on his face as if the conversation had never happened. "Brother." He opened his arms when Marcus entered. "It has been so long." Marcus did not smile. He looked at Victor, then at Scarlett, then back at Victor. The air in the room thickened until it could have been cut with a knife. "What are you doing here?" Marcus asked, his voice cold as ice. "Visiting my nephew, of course," Victor replied, still smiling. "Is that not allowed?" Marcus did not answer. The two brothers stared at each other in silence, and Scarlett felt something boiling beneath the surface, something dark and dangerous. Victor said goodbye, said he would return soon, and drove away. After the sound of the Porsche engine faded, Marcus turned to Scarlett, his gray eyes stormy, and his voice leaving no room for argument. "Stay away from Victor, at any cost. There are nights when the line between right and wrong becomes as blurred as cigarette smoke." 1 week after Victor's appearance, Scarlett still could not shake the feeling of unease. Marcus's warning echoed in her mind, and she began to look at everything around her with greater suspicion. That night she could not sleep. The clock read 2 in the morning, and her throat felt dry. She decided to go down to the kitchen for water, her bare feet moving softly over the cold marble floor. But as she passed the living room, she stopped. Someone was sitting in the dark. Marcus sat on the black leather sofa, one hand holding a glass of amber whiskey, his eyes fixed on nothing. He had not turned on the lights. Only moonlight slipped through the window and cut across his sharp face, casting dramatic shadows, and on his white shirt were dark stains of red. Blood. Scarlett drew a deep breath and started to turn away. She did not want to know whose blood it was. She did not want to sink deeper into this dark world. But Marcus's voice rose in the shadows, low and rough. "Stay." Not a command, not a request, just 2 simple words, carrying something Scarlett could not resist. She sat on the sofa opposite him, pulled her legs up, and hugged her knees. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the ticking clock on the wall. "Whose blood is that?" she asked at last, her voice barely a breath. "Someone who deserved to die," Marcus replied without looking at her. Silence returned. Scarlett watched him in the dark, the hard line of his jaw, the gray eyes lost in thought. He looked tired, not the tiredness of the body but of the soul, of a man who had carried too much and did not know where to set it down. "Are you afraid of me, Scarlett?" Marcus asked suddenly, and finally turned to her. "Yes," she answered honestly. "Good." He nodded and took a sip of whiskey. "You should be, but not for the reason you think." Marcus lifted an eyebrow, curious. Scarlett inhaled, her heart racing, and said what she had hidden for so long. "I am not afraid of what you do to others. I am afraid of what you do to me, to my feelings, to my heart." Marcus set the glass on the table and slowly stood. He walked toward her, each step heavy and deliberate. Scarlett did not move back. She could not. "I am a monster, Scarlett," he said, his voice low and wounded. "My hands are full of blood. My heart is stone. I have killed more people than you could ever count. You should run far away from me." "Monsters do not read stories to their sons," Scarlett replied, her voice trembling but not weak. "Monsters do not pay hospital bills for a stranger's mother. Monsters do not sit watch over a woman having nightmares." Marcus stood before her, close enough that she could smell the whiskey, the blood, and something that was uniquely him. Close enough that she could hear his heart beating, or maybe it was her own, she could no longer tell. "If I kiss you now," Marcus whispered, his hot breath on her lips, "I will not stop." "Who said you have to stop?" Scarlett heard herself say, not knowing where the courage came from. Marcus growled softly in his throat, a raw sound of hunger and restraint, and then he kissed her, not gently, not romantically, but like a drowning man seeking air, fierce and desperate, his mouth claiming hers, his tongue demanding, and Scarlett answered with the same wild intensity, her hand fisting his blood-stained shirt and pulling him closer, his hand sliding into her hair and lifting her face, the kiss deepening, burning, the world disappearing. No mansion, no mafia, no painful past, only his mouth on hers, the taste of whiskey and blood on her tongue, and the fire consuming them both from within. Then Scarlett pushed him away, breathless, lips swollen, heart pounding as if it would break free. "I cannot," she whispered. "Not yet." She turned and ran back to her room, did not look back, did not dare to look back. She leaned against the door, her lips still tasting of whiskey and blood, knowing that neither of them would sleep that night. A storm never comes without signs. It is only that not everyone sees them. 1 week after that night's kiss, The air between Marcus and Scarlett was stretched tight like a string about to snap. They did not speak of what had happened, did not mention the taste of whiskey and blood on their lips, but everything had changed. The lingering looks across the dinner table, the accidental touches when their hands reached for the same thing, her breath growing heavier whenever he entered a room, and the way she caught him watching her when he thought she was not looking. Yet both kept their distance, as if afraid that if they came any closer, the fire of that night would flare again and burn everything down. Marcus was busier than before. He left at dawn and returned at midnight, his face tight with strain and fatigue. Scarlett did not ask, but she knew something was happening. She saw the secret meetings in the study, the guards moving with grave faces, and Marco constantly whispering into Marcus's ear with worry. She did not know that in a closed room in the basement, Marco was reporting what his scouts had discovered. Victor had been secretly meeting Alexei Kozlov, the notorious Russian Mafia boss, the sworn enemy of the Valenti family. They met in secluded restaurants in the outskirts. In nightclubs, Victor thought no one watched, but Marcus had eyes everywhere. Marcus listened to the report, his face expressionless, but his gray eyes darkened like the sky before a storm. "Keep watching," he ordered, his voice cold as steel. "But do not act yet. He is my brother. I need undeniable proof." A few days later, Victor appeared again at the estate, just when Marcus happened to be away, in a meeting with allies in the south of the city, or at least that was what Victor believed. He found Scarlett playing with Nico in the garden, waited until the boy ran off to chase the new dog, then approached her. This time he did not pretend to be friendly. "Things are about to change, Scarlett," Victor said, his voice low and suggestive. "You should choose the right side." "Is that advice or a threat?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm while her heart raced. "It is your last chance," Victor replied, all smile gone from his face. "My brother cannot protect you forever. No one can. When this is over, you will have to choose. Stand with the winner or be buried with the loser." He turned and walked away, but before disappearing through the door, he looked back at her. That look was cold as ice, stripped of all the easy charm he had worn before. He looked at her as if she were already a corpse, as if her fate had been sealed. Scarlett stood in the garden, her feet rooted to the ground, until the sound of Victor's engine faded. She did not wait until night. The moment Marcus returned, she pulled him into the study, closed the door, and told him everything, every word, every look, every veiled threat. Marcus's face darkened by the second. "What exactly did he say?" Marcus asked, his voice like thunder before a storm. "He said everything is about to change," Scarlett answered. "He told me to choose a side, to stand with the winner or be buried with the loser." "He looked at me like I was dead, Marcus." Marcus turned away and went to the window, staring out into the darkness over the garden. He stood there a long time, silent, as if wrestling with something inside himself. Then he took out his phone and called Marco. "Double the security," he ordered. "Bring more men into the estate. Guard it around the clock. It is coming. Victor will make his move." He ended the call and still did not turn back to her. "Why do you not act first?" Scarlett asked, stepping closer. "You know he is betraying you. Why not stop him?" Marcus turned, and in his gray eyes she saw something she had never seen before. Pain, conflict, and a deep sadness. "Because no matter what, he is still my blood," Marcus said hoarsely. "And to kill your own blood is something even a devil has to think about. There are last nights that people do not know are the last. And then there are nights like this one." Marcus called Scarlett into the study right after dinner. Nico had been taken to bed by Rosa, and the dark oak-paneled room held only the two of them. Marcus stood beside the desk with a small, compact gun in his hand. "A Glock 19, he said as he placed it into her palm. "Light, easy to use. It fits your hand." Scarlett looked down at the cold weight in her palm, her heart pounding. "I do not know how to use a gun." "Learn." Marcus stepped behind her, his hands lifting hers, showing her how to hold it, how to aim, how to pull the trigger, his breath warm against her neck, and Scarlett had to force herself to focus on his words instead of the closeness of his body. "This is how you release the magazine. This is how you chamber around. When you shoot, keep your hand steady. Aim for the body, not the head. It is a larger target and easier to hit." "Why do I need to know this?" Scarlett asked, though she already knew the answer. "Because I do not know what will happen," Marcus replied quietly and seriously. "If something happens, you take Nico to the panic room. The basement, third door on the left. The code is Nico's birthday. 11111. 5 ones, because it is the 11th of November. The steel door is 15 centimeters thick and can withstand armor-piercing bullets. Inside there are cameras, water, food, and a hidden escape route to the riverbank." "You are frightening me," Scarlett whispered. "Good." Marcus turned her to face him, his large hands on her shoulders. You should be afraid, but you should also be ready." His gray eyes held hers, and Scarlett saw not only concern but real fear in them. Not fear for himself, but for her and for Nico. "Whatever happens," Marcus said hoarsely, "protect Nico. That is the only thing that matters." "What about you?" Scarlett asked. "I will take care of myself." She wanted to scream that she did not care if he could take care of himself, that she did not want to lose him, that the thought of a world without him stole her breath. But she said nothing. She only nodded and tightened her grip on the gun. That night Marcus did not sleep in his room in the West Wing. He came to Scarlett's room, knocked softly, and when she opened the door he said nothing. He only stepped inside, closed the door, and lay down beside her. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her into the warmth of his chest, saying nothing, doing nothing, only holding her as if trying to memorize the feeling of her in his arms, as if this might be their last night together. "Marcus," Scarlett whispered in the dark. "Yes, I do not regret it," she said softly, "making that call on that rainy night. If I could do it again, I would still call." A long silence, then Marcus kissed her hair, his lips warm on the top of her head. "I know," he whispered. "I do not regret it either." Answering, they lay like that until morning, not sleeping, only listening to each other's heartbeats in the dark, and neither of them knew that those were the last peaceful hours they would ever have. Hell did not arrive with fire. It arrived with gunshots at 2 a.m. Scarlett jerked awake, her heart racing, her ears ringing from the sharp explosions. She reached to the other side of the bed and found it empty. Marcus was gone. More shots echoed from below. Glass shattered. People screamed. Feet pounded through the halls, and threaded through it all were shouted words in a language Scarlett did not understand but recognized instantly as Russian. Victor had made his move. Scarlett leapt from the bed, grabbed the Glock from the nightstand where Marcus had made her keep it. She did not think. She did not hesitate. Only one name filled her mind. Nico. She ran into the hall barefoot on the cold marble. The lights were out. Only red emergency lamps blinked like blood. Darkness and red light flickered together like a nightmare. But the shots were real. The screams were real. And the terror in her chest was real. Nico's room lay at the end of the hall less than 20 meters away. Yet it felt like 20 years. She ran with the gun heavy in her hand. A shadow appeared at the stairs, and she almost pulled the trigger. Before she saw it was Rosa, the old housekeeper, shaking and pale. "The boy!" Rosa cried. "You have to take the boy. I know." Scarlett did not stop. She burst through Nico's door, and her heart stopped for a moment until she saw him. Nico was curled in the corner of the bed, wide-eyed and crying. The puppy curled beside him, yipping in fear. "Scar!" he cried when he saw her. "What is happening?" "The shots. I am scared." Scarlett scooped him up and held him tight. "Listen to me," she said fast, forcing her voice steady. "We are going to play hide and seek. Remember, I will take you to the secret hiding place. You have to be quiet, completely quiet. Can you do that?" Nico nodded, with tears still falling, but he did not cry aloud. Scarlett carried him out with one arm and the gun in the other. The puppy ran at their heels, down the east stairs, away from the fighting in the West Wing. Shots and shouts echoed behind them. She did not know who was falling. She did not dare think. The basement was dark, with only a dim emergency light at the far end. She counted doors. 1, 2, 3. She stopped at the heavy steel door, her hands shaking as she set Nico down and entered the code. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. The lock clicked and the door opened. She pushed Nico inside. The puppy followed. Then she stepped in and sealed the door. Locked. Safe. She leaned against the steel, gasping. The room was small and armored, with a row of security monitors glowing in the corner. A narrow bed, bottled water, dry food, and another door at the back for the hidden escape Marcus had told her about. Nico sobbed and clutched her leg. "Where is Papa?" he asked. "Papa will be all right." Scarlett knelt and held him, though she did not know if she was lying. "Papa is fighting the bad people. Papa is very strong. Papa will win." She wrapped him in a blanket and turned to the monitors. The ground floor was a battlefield. Dark figures moved. Muzzle flashes burst. Bodies lay still. And there he was. Marcus fighting like a beast with no way out. His white shirt soaked with blood. Guns in both hands. He dropped one enemy, then another, but there were too many. Mercenaries pouring in from every side. She saw a bullet graze his shoulder and blood spray. Yet he did not fall. He kept fighting, kept shooting, kept killing. But she knew he could not hold forever. Nico cried softly in the safe room with the puppy tucked against him, and Scarlett watched the screens where the man she loved was fighting hell alone. There are moments that define who a person truly is. And Scarlett's moment came when the panic room door began to shake. She was staring at the security screens, watching Marcus fight Kozlov's men. When the violent pounding made her flinch, it could not be possible. The steel door was 15 centimeters thick and built to withstand armor-piercing rounds. But the pounding did not stop, and then she heard shouting in Russian right outside. "Open it!" one voice roared. "We know you are in there." Scarlett looked at the hallway camera and saw 3 of Kozlov's soldiers at the door, one of them holding a metal cutter, sparks flying as the blade bit into the steel. They were cutting their way in, and she had very little time. "Nico." She turned to the boy sobbing in the corner with the puppy yelping in fear. "Listen to me." She knelt at his level, her voice strangely calm, while her heart was trying to tear itself apart. "Hide behind that steel cabinet. Do not come out until I call you. Do not come out no matter what happens. Do you understand?" Nico nodded through tears and crawled into the shadowed space behind the cabinet, clutching the puppy. Scarlett watched him disappear and then turned back to the door. She checked the gun. 12 rounds, 12 chances. She scanned the room for anything else she could use. A fire extinguisher on the wall. She yanked it down and felt its weight. Sparks were carving a widening arc into the steel door. Only minutes left. Scarlett took her position, gun raised, extinguisher at her feet. She remembered Marcus's words. "Aim for the body." The door burst open with a shriek of metal. 2 men rushed in with their weapons raised. Scarlett fired. The first shot missed and hit the wall. The second struck one man in the shoulder, and he fell, screaming. The other lunged toward her faster than she expected. She dodged sideways, grabbed the extinguisher and swung it into his head. Bone cracked and he dropped. The third man appeared in the doorway with his gun aimed at her. She threw the extinguisher and fired. The bullet hit the canister and it exploded into white foam that blinded him. She fired again and hit his chest. He went down. 3 bodies on the floor. Scarlett stood there gasping with the gun shaking in her hand. She had done it. She had protected Nico. And then slow mocking applause came from the doorway. Impressive. Victor Valenti stepped in with his suit still perfectly pressed as if he had come from a party instead of a massacre. Truly impressive. He smiled, but his brown eyes were ice. "My brother chose well." His gun lifted and pointed at Scarlett's chest. She raised hers, but he was faster. "Bring the boy out," Victor said calmly, as if asking for a glass of water. "Or I shoot you dead right here." "No." Scarlett did not move and shielded the space where Nico was hiding. She did not tremble. She had run her whole life. From poverty, from Derek. But she would not run from this. She would not let anyone touch Nico. Victor sighed as if disappointed, and then he fired. The bullet tore through Scarlett's thigh. She screamed and fell, the gun skidding from her hand. Pain exploded through her and blood soaked the cold concrete. But she did not cry, and she did not beg. She only lay there breathing hard and staring at Victor with pure hatred. Last chance? Victor stepped closer and aimed at her head. "Bring the boy out." And then a shadow crashed into him from behind. Marcus, bloody, shirt torn, face bruised, but alive and still fighting. The brothers faced each other. Victor swung the gun toward Marcus, and for a moment time stopped. "You always had everything," Victor screamed. "Our father loved you more. The empire was yours. Even she is yours. What did I ever have?" Marcus answered with motion, not words. He charged. They grappled. A shot rang out, and Marcus cried out as a bullet tore into his shoulder. But he did not stop. He struck and struck until Victor fell unconscious. Footsteps thundered in the hall as Marco and reinforcements finally arrived and flooded the room. At a grim nod from Marcus, Marco hauled Victor's limp body away to face the family's permanent justice, ensuring his betrayal would never breathe another word. Scarlett saw only Marcus as he turned to her, his gray eyes searching through the chaos. And when he saw her lying in blood for the first time, she saw true fear in the eyes of the devil. Some people have to walk through fire to find home, and Scarlett Monroe walked through fire and found a kingdom. 3 days after the attack, Marcus woke in the recovery room of the estate. The bullet had passed through his shoulder less than an inch from his lung, but he survived, too stubborn to die, Marco said as he stood guard outside the door. Scarlett sat beside Marcus's bed for those 3 days, her leg bandaged, her face bruised, but she did not leave for even a moment. Nico slept on the sofa in the corner with the little dog curled beside him, both exhausted after the nightmare. When Marcus opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was her. "You saved him," he whispered, his voice rough with thirst. "Again, I am thinking of sending you the bill," Scarlett replied, and a weak smile appeared on both their lips. The smile of people who had walked through hell and lived. A week later, when Marcus could sit up, he called Scarlett into the study. On the desk lay a passport in the name of Elena Rossi, and a document confirming a Swiss bank account with a balance of $5 million. "You can leave," Marcus said calmly, though his gray eyes were not. "Start over. Live a normal life. Find a normal man, an accountant or a dentist, someone who will never make you hold a gun or hide in a safe room." Scarlett looked at the passport, at the number on the paper, then at Marcus. "You want me to go?" Silence stretched. Marcus looked out the window, his jaw tight. "I want you safe. Beside me, you will never be safe. I am darkness. Scarlett, I am blood and death. I destroy everything I touch." Scarlett stood and stepped in front of him, so he had to look at her. "I lived 27 years safe," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Poor, abandoned, beaten, lonely. No one protecting me, no one caring. That is not the life I want anymore. Scarlett, no." She shook her head, tears running down her face. "I choose to stay. I choose Nico. I choose you. Whether you are a devil or darkness or whatever you think you are, I choose you." Marcus looked at her, and for the first time the mask of stone completely fell away. He pulled her into his arms and held her tight as if afraid she would vanish, and he kissed her, not the wild, desperate kiss of that night, but a gentle one. A vow that needed no words. 6 months later, the annual charity gala of the Chicago Children's Hospital was the event of the season, the most luxurious hotel in the city, filled with expensive suits and glittering gowns. Politicians, business leaders, celebrities, and those who truly held power in the shadows all present. The grand doors opened, and a strange hush spread through the room. Marcus Valenti entered in a perfect black tuxedo with the authority of a king entering his realm. Yet no one looked at him. Every eye turned to the woman beside him. Scarlett Valenti walked with her head high and her shoulders straight, each step carrying a confidence she had not possessed 6 months earlier. The wine-red gown clung to her figure. Diamonds sparkled at her throat and ears, and on her left hand shone a wedding ring with a diamond so large it seemed unreal. She was no longer the tired waitress with $9 in tips each night. She was the mistress of the Valenti Empire. "They are staring," Marcus murmured in her ear as they descended the stairs. "Let them stare," Scarlett replied silkily. "They are only wondering how a waitress tamed a wolf." "They are afraid of you," Marcus said with a rare smile. "The story of the panic room has spread. They say you took down 3 men with only a fire extinguisher." Scarlett laughed softly. "Only 3? The rumor is weakening already." A senator approached, sweat on his brow and a strained smile on his lips. Marcus gently pushed Scarlett forward and she handled it perfectly. "My husband tells me you are delaying the permit for our charity project," she said sweetly with eyes sharp as ice. "I hope we can resolve that tonight. I hate when things become complicated." The senator paled and stammered promises to fix everything within the week. When he fled, Marcus looked at his wife with pride. "My wife has a terrible temper," he said, loudly enough for those nearby to hear. "I advise everyone not to test it." Just then, a small tug on her gown made Scarlett look down. Nico stood there, handsome in his tiny tuxedo. The little dog, somehow having sneaked in, sat at his feet. "Mama," he said, and Scarlett's heart melted as it always did at that word. "I am bored. Can we go eat burgers?" Scarlett bent and stroked his hair, her eyes shining with happiness. She looked at Marcus. He looked back, and without words they understood. "Sal's Diner?" Marcus asked with a raised brow. "Sal's Diner." Scarlett nodded. The 3 of them left the gala, leaving behind the stunned elite watching them go. The most powerful mafia boss in Chicago, his wife, and his small son leaving the grandest party of the year to eat burgers at a cheap diner, and they did not care what anyone thought. Scarlett Monroe had called the devil on a rainy Chicago night. She did not only survive, she learned to love him. And together they owned the night. The story of Scarlett and Marcus teaches us that sometimes the best things in life come from the darkest moments. That kindness, even as small as stopping to help a child in a dark alley, can change an entire destiny. That true love does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be real, and that even hearts that seem turned to stone can learn to love again if they meet the right person. If this story touched your heart, please press like to support us. Share this video with those you love so they too can hear meaningful stories, and do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our daily stories. We would love to know how you felt about this story. Have you ever faced moments when life pushed you into darkness, but there you found light? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every comment and treasure each one from the depths of our hearts. Goodbye, and see you in the next video. We wish all of you watching good health, a joyful life, and peaceful days. Thank you for being with us. Farewell and see you again.